Now we are starting with some very interesting but very useful topics. So today I'll start with functions, which is extremely important and you have to use whether you want or not. So let's start with functions. So first of all, let's quickly understand a little bit theory of functions, then we'll jump on the coding examples. So first of all, what is a function? So a function is a block of organized, reusable code that performs a single action. So what we do generally, until now, we are writing only the lines of code and those lines are not organized. So in function, what we can do for a single purpose, like for addition, for multiplication, we can create different functions and then they will perform only that action. So we will just call that function and that function will perform the operation inside and it will return us the value. For example, we want to perform a 2 plus 3 plus 4. Okay, so what we can do, we can just call the function which performs the addition operation and we just provide these values 2, 3, 4 and it will return us the sum. We don't need to take care how the addition works, right? So that's how it works. And once the function is created, you can call it multiple times and you can use it again and again. So that's why it is known as the organized and reusable code that performs a single function. Okay, the function provides better modularity and high degree of code reusability. Modularity means when we have a big problem, right, and we can split that problem into few functions. For example, let's say we are creating a Python code for calculator. In calculator, we have addition, subtraction, division, multiplication. So what we can do, we can separate all those operations in 4 functions, right? One function for addition, another is for subtraction, and the next is for multiplication and division. So that's why it provides a better modularity and a high degree of code reusability. So once those 4 functions are created, we can use them again and again. We don't need to write the code again, right? We can just call and we can use that now. So how to define a function? So let's say first we define the def keyword. So it will always be there whenever we are defining a function, def keyword, right? Then followed by the function name. So function name, as we have already studied, that is also an identifier and we have to make sure that all those conditions are meeting here. So we can write a function name. Let's say we can define a function name with addition calculator. Okay, then a parenthesis. So we will write a parenthesis which can include parameters and colon. So inside that we can have parameters which we will learn shortly, and then we have to write a colon here. Okay, so you can say a def keyword, then the function name, then a parenthesis and a column, and inside that parenthesis we can have different parameters which we will learn shortly. Then the indented block of the code following the colon is the body of the function. So once you have typed this, you just hit enter. Okay, so the Python interpreter will automatically take you the right indented place. So let's say your cursor is here. So make sure that in Python, indentation makes a lot of difference. If you do not indent your code correctly, it will throw an error. So it has to be correctly indented, right? So let's say when you type this colon, you hit enter and your cursor will be here. So from here, you start writing your further code. Okay, so this is the basic thing, what is a function and how to define a function. So let's say we define a function for addition again. So what I will do, I'll just remove these things from here and I'll write colon again here. So how does addition works? For example, I have 2 variables here. A is equals to 2. For now, we are not taking any input from user. We are just, for the sake of example, we are writing our own variable. So A equals to 2 and B equals to 3, correct? Then let's write addition equals to 2 plus 3, right? And one more very important concept, that it returns a value. So here what we can do, we can return the add, right? Add, that is a complete function here. So what will happen now, I will call this function. So maybe like I have written a code, a long code, and anywhere in the program I can call this function. So I'll call the function with this name, the name of the function. So I'll write add colon and then this. When I write the function name, this function will be called and it will return the addition. So addition will be 2 plus 3. So actually here we have to write a plus b, a plus b. So the addition will be 2 plus 3, which is 5. So it will return the 5. Correct? We can write print here, and the output we will get will be 5. Now let's see some terminologies in functions. So first is defining. So we have seen that we have to use def keyword to define a function. Then to call that function, we have to use the function name followed by parenthesis to call a function. So here we call the function with the name and followed by a parenthesis. Correct? Then, so I'll just highlight the name and parenthesis. Then parameters. So function can accept parameters to make them more flexible. So for example, these parameters we have declared inside that. So let's say I removed those from the function, and what I can do, I can write those here. So I'll just write here A and B. These parameters can be anything. Okay, so while calling the function, the addition and calculator, you have to pass 2 or and 3. Correct? So this A will become 2 and this B will become 3. Correct? And then it will add like 2 plus 3, because here A equals to 2, B equals to 3. So we have arguments here which becomes parameter here. Now it will add those and it will return us the 5. So we can print here. So this way we can print. Hope you are able to understand, and if not, don't worry, we will perform so many function examples that it will be cemented in your mind forever. Don't worry about that. Okay, let's just focus on these things. So parameters we have done. So the function can accept the parameters also, right? Then we have return values. We have seen that already. Correct? Here we have to write return and whatever the value we want to return. Okay, so we can say that function returns a value. So it is also done. So I will just tick. Defining, you have understood. Calling a function, you have understood. Parameters, you have understood. Returning a value, you have understood. Now default parameters. Sometime what happens, like past parameters here, A and B, but somehow this user who is using this function forgot to pass the arguments here, right? He just called the function, correct, but without any arguments. So if you don't write any default parameters here, the function will throw a very dirty error. Dirty means it's not good looking. Okay, so in order to avoid that error, because you are the programmer and you are responsible for your functions, so you have to make sure that whatever the inputs get, you always have to handle all those errors. You have to anticipate that what a user can make mistakes. So in order to avoid that, what you can do, you can pass some default parameters here. So let's say I have given A equals to 1 and B equals to 2. So now if user passes the arguments, that's fine. It will use those parameters. But if user forgot to pass the arguments, so what it will do, it will just take the default parameters. So it will add this 1 plus 2 and it will return the value 3. So that's how the default parameters work, right? So it is very useful in error handling and you should be always using them. Now we have keywords arguments. So keyword arguments are nothing, but we are already using them. What we can do is passing the arguments as 1 and 2. What you can do, you can give them some keyword. So I can give here like A equals to 1 and B equals to 2. So then these value will be assigned to these parameters and we will get the return. We can also have some readable names, like if you are going for sum, addition, multiplication, division, then you can give a good readable name so your program becomes more readable. Okay, we will understand all those with the examples. Don't worry about that. Just focus on this theory. Okay, now we have variable length arguments. We can use star args and star keyword args for variable length arguments. So for now, you just think that we can use these and I'll explain you with the help of an example. Now we have the docstrings. We use docstrings to document your functions. So while creating a function, inside the function, you write a docstring. So the docstring is nothing but the explanation of your function. So what this function will do, what operation will this perform. So you can write that clearly in a short and simple format, so that if anyone is using that function, they are able to know that what it will do, correct? Now the last point is functions are a powerful feature in Python, allowing you to write modular, reusable and organized code. It helps us to write a modular, means the code in chunks, a readable code and a reusable code. So that's how we can define a function. Now we have a question. What is the need of functions? So the first is it promotes code reuse, then reducing redundancy, means when we have to write the line of code again and again, for a particular operation that can be reduced with the help of function. If you write a function single time, then at every place when we want to use that function, we just call that, right? It enhances the modularity, making complex problem more manageable. So when we have a very complex problem, we can just divide that problem into multiple functions, and then it becomes very easy. It improves readability and maintainability of the code. Means we are writing docstring, we have separate functions. So if anyone who is using our code, then he can easily understand that what this function does, what this code does, because of the functions and the docstring inside that. Now it provides abstraction, hiding implementation details, because as we just call the function, so the caller doesn't know what is written inside the function. He will be just able to use that function but not see the code, right? So he will not know what is written inside that, because when he will pass the arguments as 2, 3, 4, so he will get the sum as 9, but he will not know like it is written inside sum equals to a plus b plus c, until unless you don't share your code. Next we have, it provides easier testing and debugging. So whenever we have any issue, so the error will show that in which function we have the issue, so that we can quickly test and debug. Then it encapsulates data and functionality. Encapsulation we will learn again in the classes, so you can just say that it is a topic of the class, so we will learn in the next. For now, you just think that it's a way of hiding your main functionality, okay? Next we have, it enforces the drive principle. Don't repeat your code. Means it helps you to write less code, right? Then next we have, allows for parameterization and increasing flexibility. So we have seen that we can pass arguments, we can pass parameters here, and we can use that. So it becomes very flexible. So by leveraging these benefits, functions enables you to write cleaner, more efficient, and more organized code. So now we are done with the theory. Now we will jump to the coding example of function, and we will perform so many examples so that you will be the pro in functions. And after that, you know that you have to attempt the multiple choice questions, and then you have to go for the task and the mini project. So now our course will become more interesting. We will solve bigger problems. And as we have spent a lot of time in basics, the fundamentals, you will see that how it helps you to build your concepts, and you will be able to solve any questions quickly. So let's start with some examples of functions. So in that, first of all, we will see how to create docstring. So what is a docstring? So in docstring, we just document the functionality of that function. So what does that function do? The docstring can be for functions, for classes, for modules, and for anything, right? So in docstring, we clearly mention that what this function will perform, right? For example, the input parameters, the output, and the return statement. So let's say we create a function to calculate the SMA. So def calculate SMA, right? Simple moving average. So in that, the parameters will be a list of prices, correct? And then the window size. So we'll add a column here. Then the docstring can be enclosed within a triple inverted comma. So I'll hit enter. Here I'll explain the functionality. So we can say it will calculate the simple moving average. So we will write simple moving average. Then in input parameters, we can say parameters. So first we have prices. So the prices will be a list of the price. And in window, we have window size, and you can mention that it will be an integer. And here also you can mention the list of float prices, right? Float price. So this is how you mention the parameters. Then again, in return, you can mention that in return it will return the calculated list of float SMA, correct? So that, for example, you have created this function, and if someone else using this function, so they will be able to know that what this function will do and what kind of parameters this function is expecting and what you will get in the return, right? So then we will write the function. So let's say if length of prices is less than window, correct? For example, if you wanted to calculate SMA for a 10-day period, and if the list contains only 9 values, then this function should throw an error. So you will print that value error, correct? You can print that value error. The length of list items is less than the window size, right? And if the price is equal to or greater than the window, then we will simply calculate our SMA. So SMA is equals to, you have to take the sum of the list. So sum of the prices, and here you will take negative window. For example, you have a list of 100 items and you just want to calculate the SMA for the last 10 items, right? The last 10 prices. So in list, we have already learned that whenever we want to access the last value, we have to use the negative slicing, or we can say negative indexing. So for that purpose, we are using negative window. Then we can enclose this in a bracket, and here we can give the window to calculate the average, correct? Then it will return the SMA, right? Now just hit shift enter and check whether this is working or not. So it is working fine. So now let's call this function. So calculate SMA, and we will provide the list. So for prices, I'll write here, and window, let's say I want to calculate for 5 days, and I will declare my list here. So what I'll do, I'll write prices equals to a list which is having the values like 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So it can be float also. So you can have 16.5, 17.5, correct? And when you hit shift enter, you get that int object is not iterable. So we are getting some issue here. Prices, if I remove the float here, it should not make any difference, but let's try this. We are still getting the error. Let's check this. What is happening here? Let me remove this. Okay, now let's try. Okay, that's working. So prices window, and then we need sum of this, right? So I'll just write sum, and still it's working fine. Okay, so the issue is here. Okay. Slicing use नहीं हुई यहाँ पे proper. Actually, we forgot to add this colon here because we are doing slicing here. So once you do that, and then you can divide this with the window, right? And then you can see that we have the SMA, correct? Return SMA, which is equals to 15.0. And let's say if you wanted to print this docstring here, so what you can do, you can write like the name of the function, and then dot underscore, and then you have to write doc and just hit enter. So it will display you the docstring, but this is not readable, so you can print this out. So when you print this out with the help of print function, you will get a clean and readable docstring that we have given here. So this is how you can use the docstring, and you can print, and you should always be having the habit of adding a docstring inside your function, inside your class or modules. So it becomes easier for you and for your team to know that what this will do. Now we have the 2 point of views. So what happens generally? So while creating any function, you should be assuming that the end user is just a noob. He or she doesn't know anything. Means they can input anything and everything. So your function, and it should be capable enough to handle any kind of error. And ultimately, you will be responsible for your function, right? Because in the docstring, in companies, you have to write that who created this function and on which date. So the people will know that you have created this and you are responsible for this. So ultimately, it will come to you that why you were not able to handle these errors. So make sure while creating function, you keep in mind that the input could be anything. You should be, and your function should be able to handle that. So that's a basic understanding. Now we have another very important concept, that is parameters versus arguments. And I'm sure that each one of us have read this concept multiple times, but still we get confused between parameters and arguments. So let me show you again. So here you can see that while creating the function, we have given some keywords here, and these keywords are known as the parameters, correct? And while calling the function here, we have given these values, and these values are known as the arguments. So you can remember in this way that while creating the function, these are parameters, And while calling that function, these are known as the arguments. So that's the basic difference, and you can remember that with any analogy, like you can say the speed of the fan. So while creating the fan, the manufacturer set the parameters as 1, 2, 3, 4, and now when you are using, you are giving the arguments, like you want to use the fan at the speed 1. So those are the arguments. So I hope you are able to relate with that, and you can also think of so many examples, because programming is nothing but it is just the expression of the human emotions, the human thinking. Whatever we are thinking, we are putting that thoughts into programming. So it's just that. So this is the basic difference, the parameters versus arguments. So the definition is parameters are the variables listed inside the parenthesis in the function definition. So while defining the function, right, defining the function, we have listed some parameters inside this parenthesis, and the arguments are the values passed to the function when it is called. So here, when we call the function, we pass the values, the list of prices and the window size. Now we have the type of arguments, the default argument, the positional argument, and the keyword argument, right? So let's take this example again. What we can do here, for example, you have created this function, correct? And now the end user is using this function. So what happened? The end user came, and without even looking at the documentation, what he did, he just called the function and passed the prices as a list. So, and when he hit the shift enter, let me comment this out. And when he hit the shift enter, he gets an error, that is calculate SMA function missing one required positional argument window, correct? So in order to avoid this issue, what we can do, we can give default arguments. So if the user is forgot to pass the number of required arguments, then this function should not display this kind of very bad looking errors, right? It looks very bad. Let's say if you're running a very good and branded application or website and you hit with an error, it gives a very bad impression. So you cannot afford that. So in order to resolve that issue, what you can do, you can just give some default values here. So now let's say the user forgot to pass any arguments. So what will happen now? You have the empty list as the default argument and you have window 1 as the default argument, right? So when you hit shift enter, and here also I'll remove these prices. So when I hit shift enter, and now you get the value as 0, 0, correct? Because we already have given the default values, default arguments. And also this if statement was executed. Why? Because we know that we have given a condition when the length of prices is less than window. And here we know that the window is 1 and the length of price is 0. So it will print this statement, value error. So this is how the default arguments work. So now we have the next, which is positional argument. The arguments that need to be included in the proper position or order. So for example, we will remove this for now, and we do not have any default arguments. And I'll also, so here we will keep it same, prices and the window, which is 5, right? Now when I hit shift enter, we know that we are not getting any error and we are getting the correct value. But what if I just change this like 5 to the first order and price to the next? So for example, when the user is calling the function, but he doesn't know the correct order, right? So he just provided the 2 arguments, which is 5 and prices. And when he called this function, and you can see that we again have an error, that is object of type int has no length, because here we have to clearly mention that this 5 belong to the window and the prices list belongs to this prices parameter. So what we can do here, we have to give the correct order. So these are known as the positional arguments. This is nothing new. This is just the interpretation of the things we have doing since the start of this session, right? So we have to give the correct order. So I'll mention 5, and when I hit shift enter, this is working perfectly. Correct. And the third is keyword argument. So let's say as we were facing the issue, right? So if I mention the 5 on the first position, we are getting the error, correct? So in order to resolve that issue, what we can do, we can provide keywords. Because what happens sometimes when there is any module or any function which have multiple parameters, it could be 10, 20, 30, and this is not practically possible for anyone to remember all those parameters in that exact sequence or order. So in that case, you can just have an idea that what could be the parameter and you can just provide the keyword. So here, if I just write here that window equals to 5 and prices equals to prices. So here you can have any other name also. You can say list price, right? And you will say here list price. So, okay. Now when I hit shift enter, we get the correct value, which is 15. So that is how you can understand these different type of arguments. This is very simple, very basic, but it's very important to know, right? Now we have args and kwargs. So these are very useful and very important. So what happens here? Args and kwargs are special Python keywords that are used to pass the variable length of arguments to a function. And args allows passing a variable number of keyword arguments, which means args only allows non-keyword and kwargs allows only keyword arguments, right? So whenever we add a star, so Python will detect that this is a args and it will convert that to a tuple. And whenever we add a double star, the Python will detect and it will convert that double star argument to a dictionary, right? So let's see how does it work. For example, we have this function. So first we will see why we need this, right? Then only you'll be able to understand clearly. So let's say we have this function and here I'll remove the docstring from here. And also let me remove this. We just want a simple function. And let's say we remove this also. Okay, fine. Now what is happening here? Let's remove this also. We'll just calculate a function for sum. So let's say sum of the prices, and then it will return the sum of the prices. So what is happening here? We will provide some values. It will calculate the sum of those values and then it will return us, right? So let's say instead of prices, I'll add prices 1 and prices 2. Then what it will do, it will just add them. So let me copy and paste this here and I'll add an addition here. So now what we do, we just hit shift enter and then we call this function. So calculate and we'll pass 1 and 2. So when we hit shift enter, we get the sum as 3. And if I pass like 10 and 20, we get the sum as 30, right? It is working fine without any issue. But what happens sometime, like you are a programmer and you have created this function, but someone else is using. So if he came and what he did, he just added one more value. Like he wants to calculate the sum for 3 values. And that is obvious, right? So when he called the function, he gets this error, which is very bad. It says takes 2 positional arguments, but 3 are given. Means there is no use of this addition function because it can calculate only 2 values, which is not practically correct in this real life scenario. So instead of that, what we want that we can enter any number of arguments here and we get the sum. So that is the ideal situation, right? So in order to resolve that issue, what we can do here, we can use args, right? So what we will do, we'll just remove these 2 and I'll add a args parameter. So I can add like this, and if I want, I can also add args. So this is just a notation. We can mention any kind of parameter here. Let's say I'll add prices. Okay. Then what I need to do, I need to calculate the sum of that. So I'll use the sum function here, sum of the prices. Correct. So what Python will do, whenever Python observe any star, it will convert that argument to a tuple and then it will calculate the sum of that. So let's say now I pass these 3 values here. So when I hit shift enter, I still get the error. Why? Because we didn't run this cell. So when I run this cell and when I hit enter, I get 60 as return because this function now has variable length arguments and it can take any number of value we are giving it. Let's say I'm giving 40, then 50, then 60, 70, 80. Then when I hit shift enter, I get 290. So that is the ideal condition and we want that, right? Similarly, instead of this, we can use star kwargs. So this is known as the keyword arguments. So for example, when we have a key value pair, so at that time, we can use the keyword arguments here. So let's take an example here. So what I'll do, for example, I want to create a function for trade logs. So what I'll do, I'll go here and I'll create a function and define, then describe trade. Okay, so describe, then trade, and here we can use kwargs. So I'll write kwargs. You can change this to any kind of keyword you want, but generally people prefer this kwargs, so I'll keep it here. Then, so what we know that whenever Python sees the 2 star, it will convert that to a dictionary, right? So for I, okay, so in dictionary we have key and value, right? So for key and value in kwargs, and here I'll give items because to fetch the items of any dictionary we have to write dot items, right? Then I'll give a colon and here I'll print this. So print, or we can return also. So return, let's say key, and then, and we can use this sign here, and now we'll give the values, correct value. Okay, now we can execute this function, and when we call this, let's say describe trade, and we'll give some value. So for example, symbol. So now we will give this a key value pair. So let's say symbol is equals to apple. So symbol is the key here, and this is the value apple, right? So when I hit shift enter, I get the value as symbol and apple. So here now I can provide as many number of keyword arguments I want. So let's say I want to provide like the trade type. So trade type was short, so I can mention short, and whether it was profitable or not, so we can say result. So result was, we can say profitable, profit. And when we hit shift enter, we get only one value. Why? Because we are returning only one value here. So for that purpose, what we need to do, we need to print it here. So print and print. So that's how you can use keyword arguments, right? It's very easy, but very important. So now few points to remember. Order of the argument matter. So generally when we have like all the arguments together, so in that case, the first preference will be given to a normal argument, then this star args, and then we have the star kw args. So for example, if we have here this, so we can say like prices, price, and then logs, price, and args, and then we have kw args. So the order does matter here. So we have to make sure that we are providing the correct order, right? And the words args and kw args are only a convention. You can use any name of your choice. So here we have used already, right? We used prices. Here also you can use any keyword you want, correct? Now we have another very important topic, that is how functions are executed in memory. So for that, we have to visualize the function, right? Quickly first tell you how it works. So first we have to define a function, then the memory is allocated to that function, then we have to call the function, and then the arguments are passed, and then the function will be executed, and we will get a return value, correct? And that's way it will happen, the execution. Now let's quickly visualize the function. So we'll take this function, and for that what you can do, we have a very good tool, online tool, Python tutor, where you can visualize all the functions, and you should be doing that because then only you'll be getting the idea that how functions are being executed in the memory. So let's open that. So let's say I'll click here, edit this code, and I'll pass my function here. And also we need to call the function, right? So what we will do, I'll go and copy and paste the function call. So that is here. So I'll just copy, and now I can add it to the Python tutor. So let me add. So this is the function definition, and this is the function call. So when I click on visualize execution, now you have this, right? So here, pay attention. So first of all, this red arrow is at the line number 1, which is the function definition. So when we click on the next step, it skips the whole function and it goes to the last line, which is the function call. And also you can see here, there are two things created. One is the global frame and another is the objects. So in Python, everything is object, correct? So here, this function call is in the global frame, correct? So you can see here that here the function call is happening, and that function call is calling the main function, that is describe trade. And you can see here, and when we hit next, an object is created, and this is the key value pair. Symbol is the key and apple is the pair. Trade type is the key and short is the value. Result is the key and profit is the value. So now again, the red line returns to the definition, and now it will start the function execution. And here also you can see another frame is created. So now we have two frames. One is global frame, which is the frame of whole program, and another frame is created, which is the frame of function, and that is known as the local frame. So we can say the global frame and local frame, correct? Local frame of function. So now here we have the kwargs values, which are these. And when we hit next, it goes to the for loop. So now the for loop is being run. So when I hit next, it will give me the trade type. When I hit next, it will again go to the for loop and it will print the symbol apple, right? The next, it will go to the second key value pair, that is trade type, and it will print the trade type and short. Then again the third value, and it will print the third value. And now when I hit next, you should observe that it returns a value which is none. So now here we can conclude that it is printing the values which are the key value pairs, but returning nothing visually, right? But here we know that it is returning a value which is none. Now when I hit next, the local frame is diminished, that is gone. So here we can say that the life of the function is only while calling the function and returning from the function. After that, the frame is get destroyed and we have only global frame, correct? And that's how the function is finished. And you should also perform some examples here in order to visualize the code, and it will like improve your understanding. Okay, you can go through this document and read. I'll just post this on my GitHub, and please perform the multiple choice questions. Those are very, very important. And before that, what we will do, we'll visualize another function there. So let's take any other function. So let's say take this one. So I'll copy and paste it here. I'll click on edit code, and what I'll do, I'll just remove this docstring which is not required. And we can also, let's make this a little bit shorter so it will be good for you. Let's remove this also, and I'll remove, okay, let's make this price 1 plus price 2, and here also price 1 and price 2. So here what is happening, we have a function which calculate the sum. Let's write here sum, okay, sum of the prices, and it will return this sum here. So what is happening here, we have a function which calculate the sum, which takes two parameters, price 1 and price 2. Then this is the formula for the addition, sum price equals to price 1 plus price 2, and then it will return the sum prices. So we will just go here and call this function, calculate sum, and we will provide two values, let's say 2 and 3, right? And now what we will do, we will click on visualize execution. So now let's see something interesting. So here we can see the first of all, the Python code executes line by line. So first of all, it will go to the first line, and when it observes that there is a def keyword, it will skip the whole code. So now when I click next, it will skip the whole code and it will go to the function call. So here we have given 2 and 3, and this side also you can see that we have two things. One is frames and another is objects, right? So in frame, we have two types of frame. One is the whole frame of the program, and another is the local frame, which belongs to the function only, which will created when this function is being called. It's very easy. You just perform few more examples here and you will get to know. So now you check that the function goes to the calculate sum, and here we have two values. You can see here the object price 1 and price 2, because from here we are calling the function. So when I click on next, it will go here, and from here the two arguments are being passed, and which is 2 and 3, and those are in this local frame only, the function frame we can say. Now when I click on next, the arrow goes to the second line, which is sum prices equals to price 1 plus price 2, and when I hit next, we get the sum prices equals to 5. Now it goes to the return sum prices. So if I click next, then it will return the value to this, and this will print the value. So next, and it says the return value 5, but nothing gets printed. Why? Because we have to add a print statement here. So in order to do that, what we can do, we can just write here print, and then we will be getting the print. So next, 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 and next, and next, and you can see here the print output 5. So this is how you can visualize the code, and it will definitely help you in understanding it more. Okay, now let's quickly move to the next topic, which is the without return statement. So this is also very interesting. Let's go back to the Python tutor, and what we will do, we have done that recently, so we'll do it again. So here what we'll do, we'll just print this value. Okay, so here instead of return, I'll add a print statement here, and I'll write print, and I will remove this print from here. Okay, now let's run this. So what we are doing here exactly, we have removed the return keyword, and instead of that we are printing that sum prices in function itself only. when I click on this, it says, okay, I think indentation is not correct. So what we will do, okay, when I click, it says unexpected indent. Okay, this is, we need to correct this. It should work now. Okay, in this line. So, okay, it should work now. Line 3. Still. Okay. Okay, now when I click next, it goes to the last line, which is the function call. And you can see we have frame, global frame. And now when I click next, another frame is created, which is the local frame of this function. And now it will calculate the sum and it will print the 5. So when I click next, you can see that in the print we have the 5, but in return we have none. So we can say that even when we are not mentioning return, the function will return a value which is equals to none. So function always return a value whether you mention or not. And if you do not mention, then it will return a none value. So that's how you can understand this, and you can have more examples here and visualize. Now we have the next topic, which is variable scope. So we have seen it already somewhere. Let me show you. So here we have the function, and you can see here that when we executed this program, we had two frames. One was global frame and another was local frame. So the local frame belongs only to the function and the global frame belongs to the whole program. Similarly, let's quickly copy and paste this function, the above function here. So let me take this only and I'll paste it here. So, and let's change it to somewhat simpler, which is price 1 plus price 2. And here also I'll provide these values. Okay, and now let's verify whether this function is working or not. So let's call this calculate SMA and we'll give two prices, 2 and 3, and we get 6. So, and even you can write here sum so you don't get confused. Okay, so now we have 6 here. So let's say I have another variable here, and which is, let's say, okay, let's give some function here only. So we will give it the name outside function, func. Then I'll give I'm from outside of the function, correct? And the same thing we will print inside, let's say after this, and here we can give the name inside function, I'm from inside of the function, correct? Okay, and now I think it's fine. Let's take this to the Python tutor and we will try to visualize this, right? So let me click edit code, and here let's also copy this function call. I'll write it here. Now I click on visualize execution. Now you see here that, okay, so what happened here, it says calculate SMA is not defined. Okay, because we have to write sum here. So we'll just go and change it to sum. And now we click on execution. So now you can see the function is at the first line, and when you click on next, a global frame is created, and inside that global frame the function moves to this line, outside function equals to a string which is I am from outside of the function, correct? And when I hit next, it will get printed outside function, right? Then the line goes to the next, which is the function call, and it will call this function. So when I click next, a new frame is created, which is the local frame. Make sure you remember this, right? And also in that we have price 1 equals to 2 and price 2 equals to 4, which we passed here as argument. Now let's click on next. So this will go to this line, sum prices, and it will calculate the sum, and now it will print the inside function I am from inside of the function, correct? Then it will return the value which is 6, the sum prices. And now when I click next, you observe here that it will get diminished. So we are left with nothing actually. If we wanted to print the 6, we need to add print here. So the motive of this visualization was that the local frame always get diminished and we are left with only the global frame. And if you want to print this return value here, so what you can do, you can just go and you can add a print statement here. So I'll write print, and I'll enclose this in a parenthesis. And when I hit on visualize and click on next, and you can see that we have printed 6 here. Now you can say that this outside function is a global variable, but this inside function is a local variable. Correct? And also this inside function can access this variable and use it, but cannot make any changes. Okay. And sometime if you require in any case, then Python is so flexible that it will give you an option, but it is not ideal. You should never change this global variable. It's not a good programming practice. So with that being said, so here hope you have understood my point that this is global variable, and the variable inside the function is the local variable. And also this function can access this variable and can use this, but cannot make any changes. That is not the ideal condition. So you should not be making any changes to the global variable. Correct?